I want to start off by saying that I am usually very skeptical when it comes to unexplained things. At least I try to be, and it has served me well to keep my cool in otherwise scary situations. However, for the life of me, I still cannot find an explanation for what I saw that day. And I'd like to emphasize that this story is 100% real. Like every good story, I'm going to start with some context. Sometime back in 2012, I was 14 years old. I had just moved to America the year prior without my parents, so was staying with my uncle for the time being. This particular uncle was the youngest of all his siblings. All that to say that we weren't that far apart in age. He was around 21, which in my eyes made him the cool uncle. We had the same sense of humor and similar interests, etc. Why is this important? Well, imagine being 21 and single, and suddenly you have to start taking care of a 14-year-old. Needless to say, didn't stop his partying life just because I was around. So sometime in that year, my uncle started seeing this girl, let's call her Ann. He'd go over to Ann's apartment after work all the time to hook up and then come back to sleep at the house, then repeat the next day. Well, he wanted to start spending the night at her place and planned to go spend the weekend with her. But because I was living with him and with the whole being new to this country thing, he didn't want to just leave me home alone. What was his solution? To ask me to go spend the night at her apartment too, of course. She was older and had a very nurturing personality and had a 3-bedroom apartment to herself, so she didn't mind at all. She even encouraged it. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually her idea to have him ask me. I wasn't super thrilled about the arrangement. Not because of how awkward it could be, but because of how boring the whole thing was gonna be for me. Back then I didn't have a smartphone or a gaming console or anyone to buy them for me. I did have a laptop, but she didn't have Wi-Fi. So in the middle of the week when I went to hang out with a friend, he actually agreed to let me borrow his PS3 for the weekend. It was actually his older brother's, who wasn't staying with them at the time, and he had an Xbox, so he really didn't care. So long as I brought it back in one piece, of course. So the weekend comes and we head over to her apartment. They're actually more like townhouses connected together by a wall. Specifically, this is a low-income housing complex, and it has a terrible reputation in our small town for being the easiest spot to get whatever drug you wanted. The reason this matters is because when we got there was actually a couple fighting outside her unit, and upon parking in front of them, they went inside. I found this odd because my uncle told me Ann lives by herself. So as it turned out, both Ann's sister and her boyfriend had just gotten out of jail the day before and were staying with Ann for some time. But because we were staying the night, they were going to spend the night elsewhere, but they hadn't left yet. So we go and meet everybody. The sister and boyfriend look exactly like you'd expect from someone with heavy drug use and smoking. The boyfriend in particular stood out to me because it's the first time I had seen someone with a face tattoo in real life. Anyway, I let the adults mingle. Meanwhile, I go to the living room to hook up the PS3 and pretty much stay on it the whole time. Must have been around 11 p.m. when the other couple finally left and my uncle and Ann went upstairs to their room to take care of business. Eventually, I too went upstairs to the room I was staying at. I laid down and took out my laptop, and I think I started playing Plants vs. Zombies or some other half-baked flash game I had available offline. I don't quite remember. About an hour goes by and I start hearing some commotion downstairs. A lot of noise and some talking. It was loud enough that I could hear it upstairs, but didn't wake up my now asleep uncle and Ann. I thought it was odd because it was only the three of us, so I didn't know who could be downstairs making all this noise, so I figured, oh, maybe Ann's sister and her BF came back and they're doing whatever downstairs, so I didn't pay much attention to it. That was until I remembered the PS3. I had left it downstairs hooked up to the TV living room. Now listen, I'm not one to judge a book by its cover, but I found it a little sketchy that they left and came back when everyone was asleep, so I didn't want to leave it downstairs because I was afraid of it being stolen by whom I thought were sketchy people, especially when the PS3 wasn't mine and I knew if it got stolen I was gonna have to pay my friend for it. I debated whether to go downstairs and get it or not. I thought if I went downstairs just to get the PS3 and went back upstairs, it may come off as rude to them. I didn't want them to think I thought they were gonna steal it, even though I did. After thinking on it for a while, I finally decided screw it. I don't care if it comes off as rude. I'm not about to pay for it if anything happens to it. Meanwhile, this whole time the loud noises can still be heard, but I couldn't really make up any voices anymore. I finally make up the courage to head downstairs, and as soon as I open the door from the bedroom, I find it super odd that everything is dark. If there was people downstairs, I figured they'd have the lights on, and you can see the downstairs light reflection on the stairway. I get to the stairway and still everything is dark, but the noise feels louder. I could tell the noise is coming from the kitchen. The way the house is set up is you have to go through the kitchen in order to get to the living room. So I start walking into the kitchen slowly, not sure of what I'm about to find, and when I'm finally close enough to peek in what I see, well, I'm not sure how properly describe it in a way that it'll do it justice. Everything, and I mean everything that was sitting on the kitchen counters and the stove was moving. I'm talking about pans, pots, knives, all kinds of utensils, condiments, sauces, the dish rack, all the things on top of the stove bell, even the oven mitts and the pans hanging from the hooks on the wall. They were all moving and shuffling, bouncing up and down as if doing some weird kind of dance. Try holding your phone or keyboard, make it hit the table on both ends back and forth really fast like in a seesaw motion. That's what all of these things were doing. Let me reiterate, all of these inanimate objects were bouncing up and down so loudly that I could hear it upstairs as if they had a life of their own. I'm aware of how ridiculous that sounds and I have no proof of it, but I swear on my life this is true. This was happening only in the kitchen for some reason, so what did I do upon seeing this possibly supernatural event happening right in front of my eyes, you ask? Nothing. Not right at the moment anyway. I think to myself, oh, that's kinda weird. I then head over to grab the PS3, walk again past the possibly alive kitchen, and then go upstairs back to the room as if nothing happened. It wasn't until I got back to the room that I thought, holy crap, wait a minute, something ain't right here. And I could feel the fear starting to set in. I was always a little slow, but I have no idea why I didn't react right there and then. Maybe it was my brain's way of protecting me, or I just couldn't compute it right away. Immediately I got in bed and got under the blanket, cause ghosts can't get under the blanket, right? And started hyperventilating for a while until I calmed down and eventually fell asleep. The following morning after waking up, I head downstairs. I do really want to say anything right away, but as we were about to head out, I told my uncle what happened. He kind of laughs it off at first. It's kind of hard to grasp how terrifying that was because it wasn't some kind of apparition or demon thing. But I repeat to him what happened, and I tell him I'm not joking around, that actually happened. His demeanor changed and he headed back inside to tell Ann what happened. She tells him about how similar things had happened to her and her sister just the day before in that apartment, but she didn't want to say anything as to not freak us out. She said she's heard voices, she's even heard a voice call her name and stuff like that, but never see actual physical objects moving on their own. She then proceeded to tell us a story about how some time ago a child had fallen off the flight of stairs and died after breaking their neck in one of the units in that complex where she lived. I don't know how true that is, and it's probably just a way to justify the fear, but regardless, that's the story she told us. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I truly believe there's no logical explanation for what I saw that night. And needless to say, I never went back to that apartment. Context: at the time I was 17 and living in Denver. It was during the summer and took place in my parents' cabin in rural Colorado outside of Estes Park in a wooded area, with the nearest people being 7 miles north. It was summer, and as a teenager that has nothing to do, my mom encouraged me to drive out to our underused cabin in rural Colorado. Before I left, my girlfriend texted that she wanted to come over to my house, so I invited her to the summer home. She planned to leave before night. The drive to Denver from the house is not short, but that night she would not be doing so. We brought 2 cars, her, a minivan, me, a Ram. We spent a time walking outside or watching TV and such. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, I decided to stay the night, and my girlfriend was going to leave in a few minutes, so I told her, "You can leave whenever, but right now I am going to grab pillows from my truck." The cars had to be parked a quarter mile up from the house, so I began my walk, get to the car, grab my pillows, walk back, and see my girlfriend absolutely distraught. She was walking for the door a minute after I left to catch up to me, when at the door she told me I heard a light scratch. Then apparently she heard in my voice, "Hey, open the door and let me in." Luckily my girlfriend is very paranoid and decided to look through a window to see me walking down the road oblivious and nobody at the door. I am confident that neither of us was under the influence and we were both sober. But that is only the first of 2 encounters. Both of us were freaked out by this, so we closed windows and doors and slept through the night completely fine. She left quickly at around 8 a.m. and I was left alone. I decided to stay because I was actually enjoying the freedom of being alone until it came to an end when I returned to the cabin. After entering, I crossed the large room to sit on the couch when I shit you not I hear my girlfriend at the door sounding distraught, saying, "Open the door, oh please please open the damn door," accompanied with scraping sound on the concrete path. I called out and said, "What the hell is going on?" I hear a reply in my own voice. "Open the door, don't be a fool." I locked myself in the bathroom and called my dad to come over. I stayed in the bathroom until he got to the cabin and I told him everything. I don't know if he believed me, but the next day we left immediately. Which story did you like best? Comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until we meet again.